We're off and running.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming out today. This is awesome. A great way to start February, a great way to start the weekend. I am very excited. My name is Sarah Colley. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator here at the Public Library. And I just want to say we are here to serve as a connection point to empower the community and enhance the quality of life by providing individuals access to information and social, cultural, and recreational resources. Just a few housekeeping things to get us started. If you haven't been here before, the bathrooms are right out the door to the right. In case of an emergency, please do not take the elevator and take the stairs. Those are also out the door, to the right, and then to the right again. If you turn left, you'll go into another bathroom, so make sure you turn right.
I can't handle it.
And then just a little bit, I know a lot of y'all know Dorothy, but for our viewers who may potentially be online in the future, Dorothy Bradley is here to talk about her book, In Celebration, which we are selling over here with Cassiopeia. This book covers 3 fundamental things in life: what you do, where you do it, and who you do it with. At the age of 23, Dorothy won a seat at the Montana House of Representatives, where she served as the only woman in 1971. Serving 8 terms, she was known for her leadership on difficult issues she championed and her consensus-building approach. Dorothy was the Democratic nominee for Montana governor in 1992. And with that, Dorothy is here to chat about her book, In Celebration.
Thank you, Sarah. Is this working okay?
Sure is.
Okay.
Yep.
You just use the volume of your voice, and I feel like I could do that too, but if I have assistants, that's good. So, Sarah, thank you, and the Library Association and Cassiopeia. I think this is just lovely. I think I wrote this book for 3 reasons that at this point in my life I can capture. Can you hear okay?
Mm-hmm.
One was because there were specific moments out there that were so interesting or special. I wanted to remember them, and possibly I thought they were worth sharing. The second reason is I had an extraordinary political life in the bigger picture of my whole life, and I loved it, and I would like to share a little of it, and I would really like to encourage other people to get involved in politics. And the third reason is I want to get you to write your own stories. We are the generation that always said our grandparents should have written their stories and our parents should have written their stories. And now it's our generation, and we've got to do that. So to go back to the first thing about moments that I thought were worth remembering, I had a hard time kind of thinking, which one would I talk to this group about? I'll make it really quick, but I think it was about my father's snow research. And that was a huge thing in our youth. My family helped establish Bridger Bowl and set it up. And my father almost got the entire college team of deans and the presidency buried in an avalanche on the way to Bridger Peak. And he thought at that point, I better understand the science of this just a little bit better. He was a geologist at MSU. And so he went to work studying avalanches. He studied them so intently that some years later, there's a beautiful patch of green up there in summer, but mark my words, it's rocky and tough. And it was named by some lovely souls, I don't know, Bradley Meadows. And a person said to me one time, it's just so sad that your dad never knew this was named for him. And I thought about that for a few minutes. I thought, yeah, that's sad. And I thought, no, it's not sad. My dad had the part of this that he loved. He got to go up there every day. And when everybody was passing him by and going up Bridger Bowl and skiing down and whizzing by, he was off there in Bradley Meadows, and he was digging his trenches, and the scientist in him was saying, I've got to understand this. And his kids were his diggers, and his students he looped in, and he did collaboration across the MSU borders with geology and engineering. I thought, he got to do what he absolutely loved. He wouldn't have traded it for anything. And as nice as honors are when we're all gone, they don't really matter. If we're given the gift of making a contribution in our lifetime, of making things a little bit better or understandable or whatever it is, I mean, there's no better gift in the whole world. So that's one of the stories in my little book. Okay, politics. And I see my friend Katinsky here, and I'll really try to cut this short, because he and I could talk till midnight. No, I won't tell that story. It's about Chippy Huntley.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Later. I just loved having a chance to do political work in my life. I got sucked into it when I was in my 20s. By a fluke. I never, ever was the type that would have done politics in my life. And so I wanted to include some of these stories in my book. I have stories of issues that I think are important and of just politics in general. And I decided the one I would just mention tonight is the one about abortion. My most fun one is about riding across the state of Montana on my horse when I was running for governor. I mean, can you imagine anything more glorious in your whole life? There isn't anything than riding across the state of Montana, except maybe climbing up to the Bridger Ridge. Anyway, in my first session, I was 23 in 1971. And this is pre-Roe versus Wade. And so abortion was not legal. And honest to God, we didn't even dare say the word abortion in those days. We always used the word choice. I marvel these days when I see abortions written everywhere. There was a group in Montana that just wanted to have a hearing. They just wanted to have their say, their day in court. And they could find nobody in the entire legislature that would introduce that bill. Nobody. So me, as the 23-year-old in the House of Representatives of 99 men and me, I finally agreed to introduce it. And there's only two things I want to say about that at this point. One, it was the most extraordinary hearing that we'd had for the entire session. Each side had their authorities, philosophy, religion, medicine, science, everything. And it was heartbreaking because this is not an easy issue. That's the thing to remember. These issues are so difficult. None of us love them. But there were almost no votes at all to pass it beyond that hearing. The second thing I remember is that the senator, the one other woman up there at that time who was a senator from Billings, teacher, rancher, really respectable, really good human. And she met with me before I introduced it. She met with me in the ladies' room that only had either the two of us or there were two other women lobbyists at that time, if you can imagine, that were women. And she said, I want you to think carefully about this, Dorothy. This could wreck your career. I look at you and I think you could have a very interesting career. You could have a very important influence on the state, so just think about it, because it could be one of those telling issues. And I've never gotten over that. I thought about it and thought, well, if I don't stand up for this issue, why am I worth being here? You know, I mean, this is an issue of my generation. This is an issue where they just want a hearing. And so we introduced it. There were 4 votes besides mine. But what sticks with me is, number one, the dignity of that hearing, and number two, that Republican senator who didn't even believe in abortion telling me to be careful. I mean, what a gracious thing for her to do. I wonder if that kind of thing ever happens anymore. Okay, so that's my political story. God, I could bore you to death with all of them. The third thing is that I wrote this book to encourage people to write. We are the generation who said, oh, I wish I'd collected those stories of my grandparents. I wish I'd collected those stories of my parents. Okay, folks, it's your time. You better get down there and write your own stories. There's a world of publishing opportunities. To sit down and write them on the computer is so much fun. Two of my big success stories is a cousin who is writing about his childhood with his father in Scotland, and another who said, okay, I'll write my father's stories. It's such a good thing to do, so please do it. Now, let me take your questions, and thank you for being here. It's just so, it really makes me happy that you would all come and think about these things. Yeah,
What's your father's name?
Charles Bradley.
And was he at the University of Montana State
No, he's at
University?
MSU.
Was that when it was in Missoula?
No, it was always in Bozeman.
See,
Bozeman finally decided to take, okay, we'll take the state college because Deer Lodge already took the prism. God, that's funny. There you have it. Tom?
And Dorothy, does your book reflect on that real special progressive era that you were a part of? Looking back on, the environmental, the institutional reforms, the coal strip issue, I mean, the whole schmear. I mean, does it look upon those things, and have you made a judgment about how well you did or didn't do? And
Two questions, Tom.
Yeah.
Thank you. If you really want to delve into that background, the book I did before In Celebration was published as a law review from Missoula.
I've got it.
That was my effort to capture that incredible decade of visionary politics. And I was able to, sort of a COVID project, I was able to round up 20 writers of the 70s, including people in the Constitution, and all my incredible friends, Republicans and Democrats alike, who worked in the 70s to pass all of those things from stream protection to access to subdivisions to
Utility siting.
yeah, facility siting, major power lines siting, all those things. And I still see them. And I still see those people, some of them. And it was truly, it was absolutely my best project ever, because I suddenly realized that's about to slip into oblivion. And people have to understand that Montana was a really, really visionary place. What's the second part of your question? Do you have that? Do you have that?
Well, yes,
you have that
yes,
book?
I have, and I've dipped in. Some of them are long and weighty,
I know.
and I know it's a law review, sort of.
No, it's not that it was
For
a
a
law
novel.
review. Bless them for publishing it. I kept saying, no, I just want your personal stories. And, like Harrison Fagg told the stories about both the Hard Rock Mining Act and tried to do a Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, and they burned down his cabin and all that.
Oh, can you
Stuff.
imagine a Harrison Fagg now?
I had lunch with him 6 months ago. He's doing pretty good.
Oh, Lord. No, the second part, I mean, on reflection, are these things going to last? The great gains that were made, they seem like they're all being attacked or repealed, and I worry about even like the Constitution coming up and, for review, it's 10-year review.
Well, I stress out to the extreme on all of these things. And the only thing lingering up here above all of it is climate change. And I sometimes say to myself, I don't know which is going to collapse first, our form of government or our environmental system. Honestly, I don't know, Tom. Depends on what we do.
Okay, I'll slip in one more question if it's all right.
I love your questions.
Okay, so if you hadn't supported the sales tax when you ran for governor, do you think you would have won?
God, no.
I mean, did you ever think back on that? Was that
But
a positive
you have
thing
to
or a negative thing?
understand
Okay,
that I had submerged myself in state appropriations for 6 years, and I knew we didn't have a balanced system. And I knew that was at least a peg to, and then I should say to everyone else, I ran on comprehensive tax reform. And no Democrat, I mean, I angered so many of my Democratic people. I can't tell you, because they loved every year running against the sales tax. It was like the foundation of their party, even though in various other states in this country, the Democrats had promoted a sales tax because they desperately need more money. And I remember one older lady coming up to me in a parking lot when I was doing handing out leaflets in front of a Safeway or something, and she said, I could just have supported you if you weren't a woman and you weren't for the sales tax. And I said, oh my God, who would I be then? I'd be Mark Roscoe. And, none of us likes that. But the point of your question is that I wouldn't have been a candidate if I didn't have something I was trying to accomplish. And that was that. It was comprehensive tax reform. I mean, what would I do? Just go up there because I was yet another face? That was my platform, was let's do this. We can all do this together. And your question begs the answer. We did a really, really careful analysis of my campaign results. And this takes us way, way back, and only you would enjoy the stuff of this old rerun. But it was the first year Pat Williams had to run statewide because, we'd had 2 districts until then. I beat him in every rural county. My vote was better than his.
Wow.
I loved rural Montana, and I think he kind of knew it. And he said, and that's sort of irrelevant. I just remember thinking, the headlines the next day said, she lost in rural Montana. We analyzed the vote, and I sure as heck didn't lose in rural Montana. I did really well in rural Montana for a Democrat. Where I lost to Mark Roscoe was Helena and Missoula. And I lost it to Helena because he had the Catholic vote from the Carroll College to state government to the cathedral. He had the Catholic vote in Helena, and in Missoula, Labor stayed home because they were mad at the sales tax. If I'd had the vote in Missoula that Pat Williams did, I'd have won. So there's little squiggly things that someone like you would like.
Coffee one of these times,
Someone, yes.
Two questions. The first one being, who was the senator that said you would maybe wreck your career? Are you at liberty to say who that was?
Her name was Toni Roselle.
Oh, yeah.
She was a rancher teacher from Billings. She was in the Senate. She was a fabulously dignified lady. She was usually considered to be a pawn of the companies and the corporate state. I don't think she really was. I think she was just a good old-fashioned Republican. But she was a very good person, just of a totally different political persuasion than my own. And when I talked to Harry Mitchell today, wonderful old dairy farmer who was a Montana legislator in the early 70s, he said he once said something gracious about her and another senator. She was the one to send him a thank you. I mean, that's the kind of person she was. And honestly, that's the kind of person we don't have anymore. And I'm just convinced the system of ugly hatred, rudeness is going to collapse on itself, and we'll get back. Think so?
I hope so.
You're nodding. Yes.
And then thank you very much. And then my second question dovetails off Tom's question, and then also dovetails off your analysis with the data. With all that being said, do you think, because it was such a close race, when you ran against Governor Roscoe, in hindsight, which is always, doesn't really go well anyway, do you think there was anything you could have done based on everything, you weren't going to change your sales tax view, labor wasn't going to come out. Is there anything looking back that maybe you could have done, that you could have picked up the X amount of votes to win, without changing who you were, all the things you've talked about in Tom's question? Could you have done anything to win in 1992?
Oh my God, that's such a marvelous question. Without selling my soul.
Right. No, exactly, I mean that wholeheartedly.
That's a wonderful question. I honestly think he out-campaigned me. I think there are crazy things that happened towards the end. Like I remember the Sunday before Election Day, all the churches in every single parking lot were leafleted with flyers that said, "Dorothy's for bestiality."
Oh my God.
I know, it really happened. It was a very careful effort. Now, would that have changed anything? I don't know. I mean, would people believe that stuff? It was all about, you know, legislation that had come up years before about sodomy and all that stuff. And Mark and I didn't have any difference of opinion on it. So I don't know. All I can tell you is I wish I'd been better. I can remember about 5 debates where I wish I'd just been a little bit better. He was such an eloquent spokesman. But this is the good thing. In the last couple of years, we've become really good friends. We've supported independent candidates. We've supported the Constitution. He's doing really, really amazing things for the state. That's what's important to me. That has been a really good friendship that I have loved developing. So he has his own devils to live with, honestly, with Enron and all of that. I don't even think about it anymore. I put it on the past, and I love putting it in the past. I think that is for the historians. I don't have to worry about that anymore. After 30 years, whew, it's gone. And now we're supporting the same thing. We're just trying to get on a better track in this horrible milieu of ugliness and hatred in Montana and national politics. I love everything he's doing. Yeah.
I have friends who were hoping you'd run again for governor.
Oh, God.
Why didn't you choose to run again?
I know. I'm old and weary. But I love helping all these wonderful young people that are getting involved. Sarah, where are you? Oh, God, she's involved in about 10 things in the city of Great Falls. Those are the people I'm cheering on. Yeah. You had one more question. I think we ought to stop because we're getting...
It's not a short question. A couple of times you said it's not that way anymore. This is my second time in Great Falls. First time was in the first decade of this century. Second time I came back a couple, 3 years ago. First time I was here, I fell in love with the town, and a large part of the reason I did is I knew several pairs of people, which one was a rabid Republican and one was a rabid Democrat, and each of them knew that politically the other guy was an idiot. But they were best friends for fishing and baseball and playing cards and whatever. I feel like what you said. I came back to a different town. It's not that way anymore.
Well,
Is there any hope for it to get back to that way?
you know, I'm not a sunny side political person. I loved Jerry Brown's statement, former governor of California. He said, "I'm not in the business of hope." That's how I feel. I'm not in the business of hope. I'm in the business of fighting, because I'd rather fight than watch. And a lot of this is up to us. I notice in so many places I go and people I see, the common words, "Oh, well, we can't talk about politics." I keep thinking if it was my family, what would we talk about, you know? I mean, we down here can't talk about anything right now because we end up shouting and angry. And if that's where we are down here on the ground, that's where they are going to be up there in Washington and Helena. Until we can all sit down and deal with this, we can't expect anything better out of them. And that's just the sad truth. But I am truly going out of my way to understand and befriend, and I love them. My ranch neighbors outside of Clyde Park, my huge array of friends. And we can talk about just about anything if we set our minds to it. And I don't know what's wrong with us. Why aren't we doing that? In the legislature, we always did that. I always had to sit down after 24 hours and talk to the next guy who'd smeared me on the floor of the House, you know? I mean, this is the spice of life. And if we can't do it down here on the ground, well, forget them up there in Helena, D.C. I feel like yes.
One question. What did you gain from your political career and book writing career?
My political career and my what?
Book writing career.
Folk writing?
No, well, you're an author.
Oh God, I hoped you was going to say riding, like horses. I didn't have a career in horses, I just loved them. I gained a respect for politics. I honestly don't think there's anything better you can do with your life if you have the willpower to go and do it. I mean, what better compliment is there than you're elected by a group of people who know you to represent them on the toughest issues of the day? There's no bigger compliment. And I mean, I'd do it again today if I could. I don't have the energy and the wherewithal. But there is no bigger compliment, and there's no bigger delight than trying to assess what we do on these horrendous problems. I mean, every day I think about climate change and what would I do, and, you know, Palestine, and oh my God, all the array of it. But we all should want more to be right in the thick of it, and not be outside spectators. What was the second part of your question? I just think everybody should run. I was hoping to get a few more young people. This is where it is. I don't understand this unwillingness not to throw your whole self into the middle of the game. Did you have another thing?
Well, the other part was the writing.
Oh, the writing? You know, there's a world of publishers out here who will help you write your stories. There are outlines where you can follow them. Do you do the computer? Oh. Well, I'm not a great computer fan either, but there's still ways you can type out your stories. It doesn't matter who you're writing for. It might be your family, it might be for your friends, it might just be for yourself. It's so rewarding just to put it down on paper and think, those are my tracks. So I truly am a novice writer. Love writing columns for newspapers and things like that. I write in little tiny spurts. Whatever your calling is, follow it. I mean, God knows you have stories. They're worth it. Yeah, Tom.
So you know, back in the 70s, you know, that progressive era, so many young people in the legislature. I mean, all the way from Paul Richards at the age of 19, to a House Speaker at the age of 25, a governor at the age of 37.
Was that Tom?
Yeah.
Tom Judge?
Yeah. And
He's an encyclopedia.
what?
You're an encyclopedia.
Okay. Anyway, I've been told that the younger people, given the economy that exists now, as opposed to the ones we had, they just can't afford to run for the legislature. They can't be there. And it's a reason for the lack of the younger people being in the legislature.
I don't know if it's affordability or whatever. I have a number of really fabulous young people, and I keep going and checking up on them, and I'm saying, I've been waiting for you to run for governor. What's wrong with you? I'm holding all my guns, you know, come on. And they said, I can think of at least 3 right now I thought should be gubernatorial material.
You'll have to share them with me.
I will.
Okay.
I will. They say, it's so ugly out there. Honestly, it is so horrible out there. I feel like I can make way more of a difference in this world that we care about right where I am, doing my work here, doing my work in the community, and I just couldn't handle the sheer ugliness of it all out there. And I keep thinking, that's fine and good, but how's it going to change unless you're there? And you say, I won't tolerate this. I don't know. Good question. Okay, and then we'll,
You're good. You're fine. You're totally fine. We have till 6. I wasn't going to really ask a question, but comment just like what you said, that with social media and the way I hear people, threatening to kill people and just horrible, horrible things that people say for nothing, I mean, I don't think I can stand something like that. I mean, that's really, tough. I mean, back in the 90s, we didn't have the internet like that, and we certainly didn't have, X or any of those things. And so I think that is kind of scary for people to step forth and run for something and be attacked so horribly. Like you said, you had those leaflets. Well, it's like leaflets times 1,000,
I don't know what the response is except to get out there, and I just sometimes think I need to get out there and say, here I am, I mean, have at it. It's, if we don't do that, I don't know what's going to happen to us. But I mean, it seems sometimes like the most controversial of all the things that are going on right now are school boards and libraries. I mean, what is that all about?
Don't forget science.
Pardon?
Don't forget science.
Oh, science, yes, that. Are you a scientist?
I wish.
Yeah,
Embracing a couple of them.
I don't know, and particularly with all the guns out there and all of that, except somehow we've got to refrain our... This is my interesting little sign that something might change. I just read this incredible book by an author I met at a book signing in Billings last year, and he's a Montanan. His name is Nate Schweber, and he wrote a book, I hope you've had him here, about the biography of Bernard, I was taught to say Bernard DeVoto, who lived in the era, I knew he'd written all these extraordinary books himself about John Wesley Powell and so forth, but he was at the head, along with many of my family members, in stopping the dam in Dinosaur National Monument, the Echo Park Dam in Dinosaur National Monument. You're nodding your head. It's an incredible book called This America of Ours. And in this book, he talks about how Hoover, FBI, and McCarthy, and there's a senator named Tom, give me a name. McCarran, thank you. I tried to think of it all afternoon. They go after people in this country, just demolish them by calling them either a homosexual or a communist. They just demolish them, including a simple little guy in Montana named Pete Peterson, who was with the ACS. And two of his children committed suicide. His wife went into a mental institution. He left the state. Happily, he came back later when it was all over and led a decent life. But what I realized in this telling of his story is that McCarthy and Hoover and
McCarran.
can't remember that name. Keep thinking it starts with M.
Think of
It
Karen.
starts with MC.
Think of Karen.
Thank you. Thanks, I need a hook. McCarran. They all disappeared. They just suddenly went like blip. They demolished people. They ruined them. They killed them. They sabotaged them. And suddenly they're gone just like that. I think that could happen. I think that could happen to this. It's not like they disappear because they're all down there in the woodworks, but when I grew up in Bozeman, there was a huge John Birch Society there, and they put my father, a Republican professor of geology, on a communist, it put him in a blacklist of communist people. And he was just quite startled. He said, kind of, what's a communist? He's a scientist. And these guys that were doing all that bad stuff just disappeared. They roil around down there and then they come back. But I swear, we can't run this country on the hate and rudeness that we've got out here now. And it's going to all just overflow and boil and disappear. Do you think that might happen, Tom?
I hope it happens, but I'm not optimistic. I am not.
I believe you. Yes, it's going to happen.
We can't run on that kind of hatred, can we? Thank you.
Well,
I mean, I'm not an apostle of hope, but how could this go on? Honestly.
There was an interesting thing in one of the Montana digital papers, maybe Montana Free Press, about how there was some kid who was suicidal and they didn't have a bed for him, mental health treatment bed for him in Montana, and so he was going to Wyoming where they had a mental health bed. And it's sort of like people from all over the country sort of writing to the governor, like our governor, Gianforte, saying that he was enabling pedophilia and enabling all of this other stuff because there was some, I think the parents were upset that their kid was being taken out of their custody, but the kid was suicidal and they were probably contributing to the problem. But I think, what I think is really good is I think these people feed on each other. And then it's sort of the group that's correct gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Like people attacking Gianforte, who's right on their side. So you kick out Gianforte, and then who's left? It creates a smaller and smaller pool. So that's what I'm sort of hoping happens, that, you know, they just sort of feed on each other and nobody's correct enough and nobody's clean enough and nobody's pure enough. And so eventually there's nobody left. That's my hope.
God, I hope someone makes a video of that. That's wonderful.
But, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to quit unless there's one more.
I'm a horsey girl.
Horsey?
What was your horse's name?
Jackson.
And your favorite experience crossing Montana on a horse?
My favorite experience of the whole thing? Oh, goodness, there were so many.
That's a question. I like to do that.
I love thinking about it. I don't know if I could pinpoint it, but thanks for a lovely question. Every time I drive from Big Timber to Haber and go through Harlow and Judith Gap and Lewistown, that sweet guy who had the Yoko in then, Henry Gale, he loved us being there. He said, put your horses on the lawn here, we're having the poetry, the country poet, whatever, the cowboy poetry. It's, you know, you don't need to run for governor in order to ride across the state of Montana. It's worth doing. That's such a nice question.
I'm proud of you.
And every time I drive that, I think, oh, that's a place where our horses were really thirsty. We had to pull over and find a little red wagon to put some water in. So it was.
I wore my horsey scarf just for you tonight.
Say that again.
Jackson. I wore my horsey scarf for you in Jackson tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you for coming. This is a great discussion. There's hope out. I mean, I keep telling myself not to use that word. We can make a change. We can make a change, so let's all do it. And I'm energized by this great discussion.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for coming out. Thank you, Dorothy, for that wonderful talk. I really appreciate it. We do have her books over here, and Dorothy will be hanging out for a little while for more chit-chat and to sign any copies that you purchased or brought with you. So thank you all again for coming out. February is a jam-packed month of events and fun things here at the library. We have 6 more public programs throughout the month, our next one being Black Heritage Evening on Thursday of next week. So come out, that starts at 6 o'clock. We will have food, we will have fun. I'm pretty sure there's going to be music and dancing and talking and all of the things. So come on out and celebrate Black Heritage Evening here at your public library on Thursday at 6 o'clock. I'll see you there.
On the 8th.
On the 8th, yes. Thank you, I couldn't, obviously couldn't remember the date.
Please be the one.